You know,
Since I'm crying.
when I was a little younger, I thought, you know, smoking was cool. And didn't realize how it could affect me later on. So like I was telling y'all 4 weeks ago, in the cafeteria, it's not funny, let's, you know, my lung collapsed, right? I was rushed to the doctor, to the hospital, St. John's, where they explained that my lung had collapsed. They put a tube in me, very painful. Worst pain you ever want to feel. Worse than getting an arm broke or a leg broke, it's worse than that. They put a tube in, they brought my lung up to 93%, where they said, well, if we take the hose out, your normal breathing would bring it back up to 100%, meaning that your lung would act appropriately as the other lung. Now, you can breathe off one lung, but with an overload, let's say you're running and all of a sudden you're on one lung, you'll overexert yourself, and that one collapsed, you got minutes. You got minutes left. So, they inflated it to 93%, and they took me off the ventilator and was going to do some observation. After they took me off, they stitched me up, and they took some x-rays, only to realize that the lung had collapsed again. So now they couldn't go in the same spot. They had to go to another spot because all of the muscle tissue, they did a lot of, you know, forcing tubes into your system because you got a lot of muscle tissue and, you know, you got to go through the side of your rib. So, so they did what they explained to me as called a pigtail, which goes from, it's a smaller hole, a smaller incision, but it's very, very painful from the front. I thought it was bad from the side, but it's worse from the front. So they did that. So that's another week. Now, mind you, the first week I'm thinking, oh, wow, I got to get back. I figure they get it up, I run back to work. Maybe 2 weeks, I'm out. Now we're going into the second week of being in the hospital. Just being in the hospital to get the lung back up. Eventually they get the lung back up. Now, prior to the lung, I had a problem with my shoulder, but I ignored that, which was like the rotator cuff, maybe a ligament in the arm shoulder, but that's a story in itself. That's something that. So they did that. They did the pigtail, and they gave me, you know, a lot of medication because it was very painful. That's something you never want to deal with. And if I had to do it all over again, I never would have smoked. Never would have thought about it. Because what you think today is good, tomorrow it affects you. Down the road it will affect you. You know, I think it was a rabbi that told me, he said, he was explaining some history to me. Now, here's a guy that doesn't smoke, that he told me something that I learned from him about cigarettes that I never paid attention to. Now, I was smoking for almost 20-something years. He never smoked, but he said, did you know that it was, a lot of things changed when the cigarettes used to have a label that said, smoking may cause cancer, may cause cancer. They changed that label. I think they changed it. He said maybe about 10 years ago, he said they changed it to smoking will cause cancer. You know, from may to will, you know. So I didn't know that. And when he told me that, I was like, wow, I didn't even know that. But I say that to say this, that, you know, the experience that I went through with those cigarettes, you don't ever want to do that. You don't want to do it. that is very, very painful. You know, so I'm here to tell y'all that if you have intentions on thinking about that, don't do it. It's not right. Yes.
Good message. Good message.
Great. Question.
Yes.
Have you ever smoked anything besides cigarettes?
Well, if you know, when I was younger, we did a lot of it.
Like what? Can you like go into specifics so like we know what not to do, not to do?
But see, the message is there's no smoke.
No.
You know, regardless of what you may have done a while ago.
It's a no reefer.
You know,
Do you miss smoking?
huh?
Do you miss it?
No,
Really? No addiction?
no, I didn't need a patch. It was just common sense.
Right.
Either I want to live or I want to die.
We want you to
I don't need no patch to tell me which one I want to do. I don't need no nicotine, cigarette, the fake electric cigarette. I don't need that. I don't need no gum. I don't need none of that. He said, oh, I forgot to tell you guys. Like this is what the doctor said to me. Comes in, and this is after the lung dropped again. And he says, listen, we got to go back in again. I know you don't want to hear this. It's going to be very painful, but, you know, we've got to do this. We got to do it from the front this time. He says, but let me ask you something. Do you smoke cigarettes? I said, yeah. He says, let me ask you, how much do you smoke? I says, well, I smoke about a pack every 2 days. He said, oh, so do you want to come back? So I'm like, where'd this guy come from with that? I said, what? Do I want to come back? He said, yeah, do you want to come back? Because if you want to come back, just keep smoking. You'll be back. He says, for sure. He says, if you leave here after we get this fixed and you go back to smoking, he says, you're sure to come back. He says, I can guarantee you you'll be back. And I thought about the pain that I went through. The pain, it doesn't add up. It does not add up. If I knew I was going to go through all of that pain that I went through, it sounds like, okay, when they say they got to put a tube in you, and it sounds minor. It sounds minor. Now that's very, very painful.
Thank you, Andre.
Thank you. Would you like that? He take my job easy. I miss him.
Yeah.
We miss him.
Yeah, we miss him.